Yay Networks.
Welcome to Greg Louganis is Alive, the podcast that challenges what you think you know. I'm your host, Greg Louganis, and yes, I'm still alive. And I'm joined today again with my good friend and manager, Beth Zinman.
Hello. Here I am, all thrilled again to hear you say, and yes, I'm alive.
I'm alive. Oh my God.
I'm feeling a little childlike today. Like that really entertained me.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So I know you just got back from doing Florida, like the UK US Open, and now you're getting ready to go to San Francisco for World AIDS Day coming up. So yeah, I guess you're kind of, here you are in between trips and running around.
Yeah. It was a great trip to Jacksonville and UKI. We've got lots of homework.
Yeah.
Lots of homework. And I was able to visit my coach, Ron O'Brien and Mary Jane, and spend some time with them. Haven't seen them in years. So it was really wonderful just being with them and spending some time. Then I came home and now we've got San Francisco to look forward to for World AIDS Day. And that'll be, I'm looking forward to that event.
I feel like that's going to be a really nice event. It's like a lot of really nice people there and obviously a very important initiative.
Yeah, World AIDS Day. It's the 35th anniversary of World AIDS Day. And so, it's an honor to be there. Which today we're talking about gender affirming care and how important it is to feel joy and alignment between our physical bodies and our mental self-perception.
Yeah, this is a very, very good topic. Obviously, these days, a very hot topic. You and I were on the phone earlier today, and I had brought up to you how, I was feeling like there were certain things in my life that weren't in alignment with like who I was or congruent. And I know you've spoken about this before.
Yes.
I can't imagine one of those things being my gender identity. Like that is huge. It's not something independently that I can change for myself and get in alignment,
Right.
So
the fascinating thing is because we did have that one conversation with Dr. Schwab through Kristen Worley, who was our guest before, and talking about how gender identity and sexual preference and all that happens like in the first trimester of a pregnancy.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's something a lot of people don't understand, and to hear the way he described it, I wish I could remember that actually, the actual mechanics of what's happening inside the body when your gender identity is imprinting itself, if you will, into who you are, which apparently isn't necessarily aligned with your body parts,
Right. And I think is it the hypothalamus or something? There's a hormone wash, and if there's interruption in getting all of those hormones to the proper places, then you have this dysphoria.
Right.
And so, so when we say that we're born gay or that we're born transgender, it actually is true.
It's literal.
It really is. Science has proven that.
Yeah.
But it's really, the conversation that we're going to have today, I'm really looking forward to talking to Dr. Dany Hanna. And he's the head surgeon at the Hanna Gender Center in Frisco, Texas. Texas, of all places.
Texas, I know, right?
Yeah. So he performs gender affirming surgeries, and so I'm just really fascinated to kind of dig into what his knowledge and background and what his observations are. And it's a fascinating topic, and it goes so deep to the core of who an individual is, right?
100%. I mean, it and knowing Kristen also, like you had mentioned Kristen earlier. By the way, so far, your most watched episode apparently was with Kristen.
Well, it's so fascinating because when we don't have any type of experience that we can, most of us don't have that experience where, they can relate.
Right.
And so if it's so foreign, there's a curiosity. And so it's great that, people are looking into and curious about that and asking questions and learning, because there's so much misinformation that's out there.
My hope is that people did learn from that episode and that they learned something from this episode.
Yeah. That's why I'm really interested in seeing what, Dr. Hanna has to share, with his experience. And, it's fascinating. And also, I also want to ask him about the whole, transgender in elite sports, what his thoughts are about that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I just saw something on Leah Thomas and a competitor of hers, and it actually was fake news. But the amount of people, it wasn't even a real article.
Yeah.
Wasn't even real, but it was not a nice headline. I hate to click on those things because I don't like to feed the beast, but I was curious as to what was being said. And then I realized it actually was completely fake news. I had to look it up on like one of those fact checking websites. Totally fake news. And it's just sad because we need not more misinformation. We need accurate information based in facts.
Enough confusion out there.
A lot.
I'm so grateful that, when I was diagnosed HIV positive, put on AZT, one of the side effects I didn't know was the reduction of testosterone, and my body wasn't recovering. So I had that experience personally of when your hormones are off, or, when you go into hormone therapy,
right,
then there's a reduction of strength, there's so many things that happen internally.
right.
And it's hard to explain. I mean, because you can feel it, but it's hard to explain to a layperson.
What you described to me. Oh yeah, carry on.
And I was afraid to share that because I was afraid that my coach, that I was overtraining.
Mm-hmm.
So I just took it upon myself that I was like, oh my God, I'm not good enough, and I knew that I had to be in the best shape that I could possibly be. But, now learning and understanding that was probably low testosterone because my muscles weren't able to recover, so this whole, question of advantage of, this hormone wash, I'm curious because all of my transgender friends who shared their stories with me, there has been a reduction in strength, a change in their bodies.
Right.
So many things that happen because of that adjustment, but also, the relief that they felt once they acknowledged and started in transition.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about this, being able to talk to Dr. Dany Hanna, and we'll be back right after this break. So Dr. Hanna, thank you so much for joining me on my podcast. And I'm I'm so appreciative of you making the time and chatting with us, because there's so much information. Beth and I were talking about that, and misinformation. But what made you decide to practice gender affirming surgery? Let's
Thank you,
start there.
Greg. We had a pretty robust LGBTQ curriculum in med school, relatively speaking. I think it was only a day in all 4 years, but still fairly robust, especially at the time when you consider how many med schools are there and just how there's these subjects, certainly at the time, weren't brought up. And then when it came time to select residency, I picked urology. I was fortunate enough to get a spot. And early on in training, I had exposure to these procedures. I just loved the patients. I loved doing them. I saw the change that it was making in the patients. And I just decided pretty early on that I wanted to do it. I wanted to work with these patients, and I wanted to pigeonhole myself in this specific field and really only do 4 or 5 procedures for the rest of my life so that I could be the very best at them. And it was not a wasted decision. I'm really happy with that.
That's awesome. So what are some of the more popular misconceptions about this surgery?
I would say the most popular misconception is that it doesn't cure. That I would say is the most popular one. And I could tell you this anecdotally because I do hundreds of reconstructions every year. And it's hard to put a percentage on it, but it's much higher than 90%, where the dysphoria for a lot of these patients goes away completely. Okay. A lot of my patients come to me and they're on a variety of psychiatric meds. And what we find is, by month 1, month 3, month 6, these post-operative appointments, they're off of their medications. They no longer have that incongruence between outer gender and inner thoughts. Everything is just one. I would say that's probably the most common misconception.
Yeah, I mean, because I have a dear friend, Dr. Kate. She's transgender, and that's what she says. The surgery is not going to be a cure. I mean, a lot of the problems are still there, and that it's not one and done type thing. We all continue to work on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so that was, she shared that, with me, and that was wonderful. So
dysphoria comes from many places, right? Not all patients have the genital dysphoria or the breast dysphoria or the facial physical dysphoria. Some patients just don't need the procedures. But when they get that procedure of choice, if they get one that targets their dysphoria, it just predictably goes away when you fix the problem.
Right.
Problem's gone.
And also, I mean, you are basically looking at yourself in the mirror, and so you see what you see. And so if it doesn't match what your, feelings and your mind might be telling you, once that's congruent, then it just seems like more positive energy can flow.
Sure. I completely agree.
So what kind of preparation is involved once someone decides to have gender, reassignment surgery?
Sure. So when a patient decides, hey, this is what I want to do, step number 1 is presumably by that point, you've had therapy, you've met with a mental health therapist, whether they have a degree that's master's level or higher or whatever it is. You reach out to a surgeon. All right. There's not many of us. That's number 1. But you find one that you trust. You have a consultation. You ask all the questions that you want. And if it's someone like me, the questions don't stop there. You always reach out by phone, by email, whatever you want. good surgeon's always there for you. Then, specifically in my office, my staff will work with the patient. Step number one is we send patients an extremely dense preoperative packet that goes through all the risks and benefits of surgery. We go through about nearly every complication under the sun, and we prep the patients for what possibly could happen. We go through the insurance prior authorization process. Most insurances do cover these procedures. So, the Blue Cross, Aetna, Cigna, some active duty service members are actually able to get this paid for. And then patients have a responsibility to deliver essentially affirming letters from their mental health providers to my center. That's number one, an insurance requirement. And number two, it's a WPATH requirement. WPATH is the World Professional Association of Transgender Health. So once the patients have submitted their letters, I've determined that the patients are medically ready for surgery. We have them get some blood work. And then that's it. They come to the hospital, they get surgery, they're happy, and they live their life.
Now, have you ever refused a patient?
I have. I think outright refused at the initial. I've never outright refused a patient at the initial meeting. If a red flag is ever brought up, for example, if I don't think something doesn't sound right, the patient's not ready for surgery for whatever reason. If I don't think the patient can reliably take care of themselves after surgery, right? These aren't set it and forget it procedures for the most part. So if I feel like by doing this surgery, I'm going to leave the patient worse off than I found them, then I won't operate on them. What we may end up doing is delaying them until circumstances improve, but maybe the timeline isn't right. So, just to summarize, I haven't outright refused up front, but as we get into it, maybe I've requested the second, third consult. I feel like they're not ready. We'll push on the brakes and we'll say, look, we got to revisit this in X amount of time.
Right. Because the aftercare is so vitally important and extensive. It's very, very involved, right?
Yeah, for some procedures it's less. For other procedures, there are more or less daily or every other day requirements, things you need to do to maintain your surgical result. So this is, in many ways, a burden that you carry with you almost forever. Again, for some procedures, it's not. After a period of time, it's done. It's there. It's yours to use. And the other way, in another light, if you don't take care of it, it's yours to lose in that regard.
Right. Yeah. So what challenges have you come up against in the ever-evolving societal climate surrounding gender-affirming care?
I think the hardest thing that we deal with here is sort of the misinformation with regards to access to care. Especially being in Texas, right? You turn on the news any day of the week and, your mind can run wild with the possibilities of what's happening to trans patients here. Texas, there was talk of passing laws earlier on this year where they were going to get rid of trans care for, never mind the kids, for the adults. And a lot of patients will reach out to us, and the first thing they ask is, are you guys still open? And if I get surgery and you get shut down, where am I going to go to? And we just have to remind patients that, just because you turn on the media and X newscaster says this doesn't mean something's going to happen, right? There's still the Constitution. There's still laws. You have rights. And even when laws get passed, the ACLU judges can come in, they can put injunctions on those laws. So I think that's probably the hardest thing, is trying to convince patients that, hey, I'm still here. I'm here to help. We're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere tomorrow or 10 years from now. Like, I'm here for you. I think that's probably the hardest thing.
So how does your clinic stand out versus others?
Well, there's not many of.
Really, there's not many.
Yeah, that's number one. So there's not many of us out there, Greg. I couldn't even begin to tell you. Certainly, I can't imagine there's more than 30 of me in the country. So that's number one. So there's just not many transgender affirming surgeons. I only perform procedures on transgender non-binary patients. That's number one. So I don't operate on cisgender patients. I think that sets me apart. I do 5 different procedures. That's it. I don't do anything else, and we're high volume. The other thing we do is I make myself extremely available to patients. I don't have residents on my team. I don't have fellows. I don't have other physicians. So if I go do something, I pawn them off to somebody else. If you call with a post-operative problem, you're getting me or you're getting one of my staff members who's going to connect you to me. So being extremely available for patients who are undergoing this, very complicated and emotional procedure, I think is important. That's probably what sets us apart.
Yeah, I mean, it's with the transgender friends that I have relationships with. It's I mean, it really is an incredible journey, and the process just to have the surgery done, all of the things that you have to have in alignment, and also they've also shared the relief that they felt of being in alignment with who they saw themselves as. So it's just amazing the work that you're doing.
Have you ever had surgery on anything like a knee, a joint? You're an extreme athlete, so.
I had a hip replacement, and that was pretty amazing because they do arthroscopic, and it just I was back in the gym in 3 days. I mean, it was just incredible. But I also did pre-op work, to make sure that I was I was working out, those muscles were strong, all that stuff. So I did a pre-op physical therapy program, and then the post-op was really quick. But then I had arthroscopic knee with my meniscus, and that took a while. But yeah, the healing process is really really challenging.
My patients aren't getting back to the gym 3 days after surgery, right? Yeah, sometimes it's months. But yeah, you can never underestimate healing. And sometimes it takes 6 months for patients to feel like their old selves. So even when I release patients to go to the gym or, engage in funny business or do whatever else you want to do with your genitals, like patients don't feel a lot of times normal because it just takes time for the body to heal, like the inflammatory cascade. We can track it out to 12 months, sometimes even longer. So that's a real thing. And as you get older, that gets pushed out even farther.
Even
so
more.
Patient age has a lot to do with it.
Right. Yeah. Now, I need to ask because, I am in sports and all that. And that's a big question of, transgender competing as elite athletes and the fairness, because a lot of people are saying because of your, puberty and the testosterone wash and all that. But I had an experience when I was diagnosed HIV positive in '88, 6 months prior to the Olympic Games. They put me on AZT. And one of the side effects of being on AZT was low testosterone.
Mm-hmm.
And I had that experience where I was literally crawling from my bed in the morning to the bath and pour myself the hottest bath that I could withstand so that I can just touch my toes and function. And that was just I'm sure, looking back, that I was low testosterone. And so these people who are saying that that it's an unfair advantage, what are your thoughts on that? Because my experience is, I don't believe that it's the advantage that everybody's making it out to be. Because if I was low testosterone, and talking to my transgender friends who have gone through it in hormone therapy, you do lose strength, you do lose muscle, your body changes.
I would love to see some durable research on this. And my sense is the answer probably doesn't lie at either end of the political extreme, right? And that's sort of the problem with this topic, is it's so charged and it's in your face every single day. I mean, you're a diver, and I'm forgetting. I think she was a swimmer, and I'm forgetting her name now.
Leah Thompson.
Leah Thompson. Yeah, she's the poster child for this, for yes or for no.
Right.
Yeah, this is a really good question. Are there? I mean, for the organizations that put these on, like, what's the Olympic? What are the Olympics saying? What's the Olympic committee saying about this? Are they allowing trans athletes to compete in the gender that they identify as?
Well, they're in reconciliation with Kristen Worley, who was a cyclist from Canada. She wrote "Woman Enough," and she was, her treatment was really horrible. And so she's trying to prevent that from ever happening to anyone else. And also, I mean, it is such a small percentage of individuals, it's so teeny tiny, as far as the percentage that it really is affected. I mean, if you're an athlete and you say, you're competing, if you're a male athlete and you're competing and it's like, oh, well, if I was a girl, that's not going to happen. The process, and people have this weird idea that, they're going to get gender reassignment surgery so they can, be number one or, break records and all that. Now,
I suppose it's possible, but I'm not operating on you, right? There's requirements to get surgery, and your desire to be an Olympic athlete and break records is not one of them, unfortunately for you.
Right.
So,
I mean, it's silly. It's such a ridiculous conception, but I mean, I've heard that out there, and actually amongst friends that that are in sports. We have to protect women's sports, but I don't believe that it's the advantage that everybody's making it out to be.
Yeah, and that's certainly possible. So it's possible there is an advantage. I think it's also entirely possible that there isn't, and there needs to be more research in this area. In one way, I feel like we need to be inclusive and sensitive to those who want to participate in sports. And on the other end, you want to be fair to the competitors, right?
Right.
So I'm just going to use the Olympics as an example. Your Olympics are once every 4 years. I presume summer, right? Diving's a summer sport.
Yeah, summer.
Technically it's year round. You can do it indoors, but that's neither there nor here. But you train for 4 years, and that's just up to that specific Olympics. But often you've been training your entire life. So you want to be sensitive to those individuals who've also put in the work for forever to participate in that. And just to go back to the trans thing, they've also put in the work forever, but they've been marginalized forever. So shouldn't they also have the opportunity to compete, as long as it's been determined that there's not this unfair advantage? That's a difficult question. And unfortunately, it's politicized.
Right. Unfortunately, it is politicized. And it makes it so difficult because it's such a small percentage. And like with Leah Thompson, it's like, okay, the training she did before, you can't take that away, but her times are going down, because your body changes, through the hormone therapy and all of that. And so, like I said, I don't think it's the advantage everybody is making it out to be. And also the other factor is, this is such a small, teeny tiny percentage of individuals. And also as an elite athlete, I'm sorry, but we are not normal.
No. You look better than me. I take care of myself, but man, you look good, right? Yeah, you're not normal. You look unbelievable.
Well, thank you. Because Michael Phelps, he was born that way, and broke all those records. That's, that was like, if you're an elite athlete, you're beyond the norm.
But you just brought up a great point. Since you have an unfair advantage for diving, we should also cancel you and only let schlubs like me do the diving. That's the only way to have what is fair? Is it fair that LeBron James was given every gift, not to take away the hard work that's put into it? I just want to be clear, but is it fair that he's 6'11" and how much does he weigh and probably has a 3% body fat and he's just an absolute monster? Is that fair?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
What's fair?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So what is your ideal hope for gender affirming care as a whole?
Access needs to improve.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. Access needs to improve. I do a ton of TikTok lives through my account to help educate. And one of the number one thing that I get on there from patients is, something I brought up earlier on. Are you still going to be here? I don't know. Your wait list must be 3, 4, 5 years. And I have to remind patients, number one, I am here. I'm going to be here. Number two, if you're ready for surgery at the time of consultation, I guarantee you a surgery spot within 3, 4 months. It's trying to dispel all of these rumors and myths that are out there that keep patients away from the care that they get. One of the other things that I get a lot is a lot of individuals sort of despise the fact that I specialize in this area and that I exclusively operate on transgender non-binary patients. They'll say things like, well, why don't you do these procedures on cis patients? And it's like, well, I don't think you want my services. I suppose I could theoretically perform it on you. But 99.999, literally almost every physician forever of all time has only ever operated or worked with transgender non-binary patients. It's about time the trans population sort of gets a fair shake in the healthcare world. And that's why I'm here.
That's awesome. Yeah. Because somebody's got to start. You're an outlier, to be able to, offer those, the procedures, but also the care, and the care starts, as soon as they walk through that door, and sharing their stories and all that. And then the aftercare after, and you're there for them.
Greg, it's amazing. I gotta tell you, it's amazing. You see patients come in and they're always excited because they're starting the process, but there's something missing. Anytime somebody sees me, they're an individual who they say needs surgery, right? And then by 3 months post-op, when I'm seeing these patients, they're glowing. They're just a different individual. There's a different energy in the room. And it's not from me because I'm not turning it up. I'm the same person pre-op and post-op. It's the patients. You just see that they're like the best version of themselves, somebody they have never been from the day they were born. It's really special. If you get, it's funny. When I do, so the number one procedure I do is it's a transfeminine bottom surgery, a penis to vagina, is a vaginoplasty. And, I do the surgery. The patients will be in the hospital. They'll have X amount of days on strict bed rest, and they've got a really tight pelvic dressing on. And we have a thing called a big reveal while they're still in the hospital. We get to pull down the dressing and they get to see their new cells for the first time. And it's usually this big emotional release with them and the family, or, whoever they're with at the time. They've been dreaming about this for the rest of their lives, and it just comes out in an instant. And what's amazing is patients get to experience that once. I experience it multiple times every day. It's euphoric. Like, what's better than that?
Yeah. I mean, it truly is transformational, right?
Yeah.
The transformation and just the, ability to embrace who they believed themselves to be. And like you said, it's their lifetime. It's through their lifetime, and having that, that affirming procedure done to put everything in alignment so that they can truly embrace themselves.
I don't know why people get bent out of shape over it, over individuals getting the surgery. Like, why is somebody getting bent out of shape over a stranger trying to be the best version of themselves? I just don't get it. Right. These trans individuals, they're human. They're taxpayers. They're making your latte in the morning and keeping the, computer systems that you're using functional so you can go and live your life. Why are individuals trying to marginalize this population? I just don't. That's something I just can't wrap my head around.
Yeah, I mean, not only marginalized, but with some of the the laws coming up and all that stuff, and proposals of and the hate, that's what I just don't understand.
That's terrible. It's just terrible.
You shared, your experience. Is there a story that you can share with us of, like an incredible moment that was shared with you?
When you say that, do you mean post-operatively or?
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a patient maybe a year back who, she admitted this to me post-operatively. She was still young, in her 60s, had a vaginoplasty, and she had confided in me in the hospital that, so she had 4 children, and between the 4 children, they had, I don't know how many grandchildren. It must have been 10, 12, 15, whatever it was. And prior to surgery, early in her transition, several years earlier, at the behest of one of her children, none of her kids or the grandchildren were interacting with this individual. So born male, identifies as a female. They had completely disowned her from their lives. And she was telling me this story. It was very emotional. It was like terrible. Like, oh my God, like I've got two young boys. I can't even imagine if for like one day, one of them said, F you, Dad, I'm not talking to you. Never mind saying you're no longer part of my life. And that's what it is. And at some point, I forget if it was the 3rd or the 6th month post-op, she had told me that they had all come around and after surgery interacting with her because of her new energy and just the way she was her true self. They'd all sort of come around and she's back into the life. And it was sort of very, very special. In that case, surgery didn't just cure her. It also fixed the familial bond. It was nice.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, because when you're able to, when there's discord, your light doesn't shine as bright.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it's congruent, then your light can shine a lot brighter. And, I think, people, see that and are affected by that.
Think of how many times you haven't felt well. You're depressed,
Right?
whatever. The microphone's not working, your computer wasn't charged, you're trying to go about your daily activity, nothing's going right. You don't feel right. But when everything's going well and you're on it, you feel better. These trans individuals who have their dysphoria, they're never on it, ever. And until they fix what is specifically dysphoric about them, it may not be surgery. Maybe it's therapy, maybe it's medication, whatever it is. Once they fix it, they can be the best version of themselves.
Right.
And others see that, especially the ones closest to them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Now, how do we keep in touch with you? With you said TikTok, and how do we follow you?
So first of all, it's very hard for me to be on TikTok. I'm inherently a very private individual, so it's hard to put myself out there. So be kind. But Dr. Dany Hanna on TikTok, or you can reach out to me directly on my website, www.hannagendercenter.com.
Thank you so much for joining me. Is there anything else you want to share or comes to mind?
Nothing. I have one question for you. I have got a million questions, but what's a day in your life like now as a gold medalist Olympic athlete? You're not competing anymore, but what are you doing?
Right.
Just an average day.
It's changed so much. Because it's kind of evolved into various things, early in my, my retirement from diving, I was pursuing my acting and all that. Right now, I'm really into the dog sports. I'm compete in dog agility. So, day in the life of Greg Louganis these days, wake up early, meditate, do my yoga practice, and try and get the dogs out for a hike, and usually do some training. I have a young dog. He's 3 years old, and he's very talented. So I have high hopes for him. But yeah, that's pretty much my day. It's
good for you.
Yeah.
And one more.
It's great.
When was the last time you ate McDonald's?
Ooh. You know what? That was probably, I'm 63. So probably last time I ate McDonald's may have been when I was a teenager.
Good for you. Oh, I love that. I
stepped away from that, many, many years ago.
I love that. Inspiration for us all.
Yeah. And also, my dear friend who's transgender, Dr. Kate, she's plant-based. So, whenever we're together, it's all plant-based, vegan. And so that's, she's a positive influence. I don't eat the way that I used to, for sure. But just trying to be mindful of the planet and carbon footprint and all of that. And so that's something that's become really important to me.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
So what's your diet like? You got to ask me.
Yeah, no, I wasn't expecting that one. I try and be good. So first of all, I generally eat maximum 2 meals a day, sometimes one, especially when I'm operating. I'm like a 1 meal a day person. I'm having dinner. I can't be bothered with food during the day. But I almost never have breakfast. And I try, big emphasis on the word try, is just stay away from simple sugars, carbs. I don't generally eat fast food. Just a lot of meat, a lot of veggies, an occasional fruit, just to balance out the diet. And that's generally what I'm doing.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
It's, and also, I mean, through our lives, I mean, things change and things evolve, and, just being open to that and being aware. It's really about awareness, and it's like, the work that you do is reaffirming surgeries. I mean, it's to allow people to have that affirmation of loving who they see in the mirror.
Yeah, for sure. That's what it's all about, the patient. It's not about me. It's not about my neighbor. It's not about Governor Abbott or Joe Biden or Donald Trump. It's about the patient. And I don't want that nuance to get lost. It's all about the patient.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Hanna, thank you so much for joining me. This was an incredible, very insightful conversation. I really, really appreciate you coming on and sharing with us. We have a lot of learning to do and a lot of sensitivity to, because I know I'm a part of the LGBTQAI, but, I knew a lot about the G in the LGBTQAI, but I had to learn about the other letters, and hopefully this helps other people out there learn about those other letters as well, to be loving, kind, and embrace the trans community.
We could all certainly use more education. Appreciate your time, Greg.
So that was pretty incredible.
That was amazing. Listening to that, when he was talking about the story of the woman who had a huge, disconnect with her family over being transgender prior to surgery, but then that after the surgery, they actually had, I guess he described it as like her energy being different, but it's like she was finally able to free to be herself, and then being able to mend things with her family. That was really beautiful. I actually was getting, a little misty over that. Very beautiful.
It really is, energy exchange, and it's just like, okay, when somebody can be authentic and be themselves and really, and not have to hold back or hide or, it's just like, it really is transformational.
Yeah.
And especially coming from that, oh, I don't want anything to do with you. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, this is a cool person, and embracing them. So that was just amazing. Yeah. Wonderful.
I'm going to say too, Greg, he said a couple of things that I wanted to repeat and kind of drive the point home. So one of the things was describing how someone qualifies for surgery. There is a letter from a healthcare professional, like their healthcare professional. And that, there is a process they go through, which he takes very seriously. And my hope would be that all other surgeons do as well. Can't speak for any of the others, but I thought that was very interesting, that process that he spoke about. And the one thing that I really, really wanted to repeat when he said this was, just thinking along the lines of the misinformation, as you brought up in the interview, where people are saying, oh, it's an advantage, going from, say, being a, born male and then transitioning to female, and trying to like compete in sports. And so Dr. Hanna said, why is someone upset? I wrote this down. Why is someone upset over a stranger being the best version of themselves?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really it, right?
Yeah. Very
incredible.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great conversation, Greg.
Yeah, that was awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. And if you liked this episode, stay tuned. Hit like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and we'll see you next time. Namaste.
Yay Networks.